out there. You know, I know it's called Ask Me Anything About Accreditation, but all sorts of things come up. And the following we have are for people who tend to say, oh, I've really enjoyed that conversation. I didn't know that, you know, I could be a divorce coach, or there was such a thing. I didn't know I could be coached on procrastination or whatever. So my VA, Gillian, will be on the phone and let me know if any questions come through. But normally we just get comments. So I will set the scene because I can see that we are now live. I'm Dawn Campbell, Aurora Dawn Campbell, to those of you who are in Europe or Asia, because Dawn is just not a word that you're familiar with. So I'm your host, as usual, for our Wednesday session, Ask Us Anything About Accreditation. And as you probably just heard me saying to the lovely Betsy, we don't get a lot of questions, but you might be thinking we're your guilty pleasure as you're sat having a cup of coffee, eavesdropping on a great conversation, and you're very welcome. Please do post your questions. Gillian will forward them on to us. So who is this for? Well, it's for anybody who's thinking about hiring a coach. So if you're an international entrepreneur thinking, you know, we're coming into the last quarter of the year, haven't still achieved this, then, you know, my guest today, Betsy, is ideally placed to help you with that. So I'll introduce Betsy properly in a moment. Or maybe you're thinking about adding coaching and or mentoring to your skill set to either improve your communication, enhance your job prospects. But what a beautiful way to kickstart 2025 by announcing that you've trained and become accredited as a coach. And yes, it's an unregulated market, so you might already be a coach and think, what is this thing, accreditation, that she keeps mentioning? It's completely passed me by. Well, it's a self-regulating industry. It's for professionals. There are hundreds of thousands of coaches out there. They're not all professional. And accreditation is one of those key differentiators that the public can trust, that when they hire a coach who's properly trained, insured if their country offers insurance, and independently accredited, that they can trust they can deliver what they say they're going to deliver. Or maybe you're a training provider or a university out there training the next generation of coaches and you want to attract more international paying students. Accreditation can help you with the league tables. So that's quite a very quick summary of who could be listening, Betsy. And for those of you who are wondering who Betsy is, let me introduce the lovely Betsy Jordan to you, founder of Bullseye Coaching. What a great name. I love that. Really does what it says on the tin. So Betsy is the coach to entrepreneurs internationally. And you have a very useful, practical, fun, online self-mentoring program, don't you, that really gets to the nub of it very, very quickly. So you can support anybody anywhere, really, can't you?
Yes, and that's one of the keystones of my practice as a coach. And we always are practicing, aren't we? Bullseye Coaches developed and originated based on my client experiences. It was clear that my clients needed something more. They needed to be able to access something online anytime that they were in need of support. And we, as coaches, typically have our clients be the talent, right? They're the talent. We're the coach. We want them to be out there taking on their life in an extraordinary way. And I was told that transformation couldn't happen in a coffee shop, and I was determined to prove that wrong. So early on, I was trying to figure out how do I influence people, my clients and others, to actually decide that they deserved an extraordinary life, and decide that they could have access to this, and decide that they could generate it themselves, be causal of their own life. And so it's been a bumpy road sometimes. challenging in its way that I made it. I made it so challenging to create these things. But I'm an entrepreneur at heart. That is how I see myself. I'm a professional experiencer at heart. And I really believe that transformation can happen anywhere, anytime, any place. And I was determined that that was going to be the way it was, which was very helpful during COVID, as we mentioned before we went live. Um,
Yeah.
And what I found during that COVID time period was that plenty of people were hanging out their shingles as coaches because they were trying to figure out a way to support themselves. And it's a little bit easier on the surface. I think people think it's an easy profession to jump into. If they have some expertise, then, of course they could coach. And most people know of coaching from a sports perspective, right? I use the sports analogy a lot. And so what was happening is they were failing. They didn't have the support that they needed, the training that they needed. And so a lot of those businesses disappeared pretty soon after things opened back up after COVID. And so that in a way that made me feel like I was, I guess, victim of the circumstance here, because I was sad for those folks who had started out, because at this point I was coaching coaches, right? In my business. So there were a lot of people that started out enthusiastic, and as happens, we have breakdowns and breakthroughs, and a lot of people just stopped. And so perhaps some of the folks that are listening to this, or that will listen to this in the future, will consider, let me delve into this as a serious profession. Let me get the training that I need. Let me train up and support and group support that I need with other people who are like-minded. And so there's a fulfilling of a sense of belonging and less isolation that way. And then, I know we'll get into this, but what I found with accreditation is it offered a level of safety and credibility for my clients that I couldn't get other ways besides being a part of a larger organization. I think that this gave me an opportunity to be a part of a larger organization and be part of the 1% of those who take it into a very high level of a coaching experience that my clients could count on. They could count on, if somebody was referring a client, a coach to a friend or whatever, they could reference the professional standards of an accredited organization. And I've seen your dedication to this, to building the IAPC&M, and David's also, and the level of commitment that you've given that has made me feel not so alone, even though I may not have been in touch as often, in age or whatever. My experience of you and David has been that you were completely committed to having coaches fly, really. And I because I said we were cutting our teeth together, because it was a fairly new industry. And I know there's been sort of a battle between, do we have coaches license themselves? Well, we've decided not to push for that as an industry. And I think that's great, because it gives people an opportunity to advance and continue to take themselves on as coaches. It just opens up the lid. It keeps the lid open, so that people could continue to take themselves on and live extraordinary lives and model what it is that we coach, right? So it's been a great toolkit to have the training. It's also been a great support as I built a business to be accredited because of the kind of support that that particularly the organization offers.
Well, thank you for that. I do appreciate it. I love it when it's noticed that the effort that we make. But I have to say, you're one of the most resilient coaches in our international community. I have to sort of pin you down to spend some time with you because, you know, you're an accredited senior coach, you're an entrepreneur, you've got your self-mentoring program, you're an author, you're super busy over there in the States. Plus, there's the time zone, obviously. So I never get to spend as much time with you as I would like. And I hope, you know, that you will be able to do some master classes or things for the community, because obviously the younger generation of coaches aspire to what we've achieved. We've been in the industry for a long time. They want to learn tips, techniques, strategies for creating a thriving business, particularly post-COVID, when there are so many people out there now adding coaching to their skill set, who aren't perhaps properly trained or who aren't insured and who definitely are not accredited. You know, there's thousands and thousands out there. And it's not to say that they're not going to be great coaches, but they haven't been supervised, mentored, or coached. They haven't served their apprenticeship, and they could sometimes do more harm than good with what comes out of Pandora's box. That's why we're all passionate about CPD, supervision, and so on. And as you say, it's a long time since we cut our teeth on the coaching world. But how do you see that things have developed, and what sort of changes do you think we still need to make to be considered a professional profession, Betsy?
Well, some of it is happening naturally, of course. Because the word, when I told people I was a coach when I was first beginning, they were like, coach, you know, this a little bit of the same reaction that a therapist probably gets, you know. Like, you know, what are you going to do to me? How are you going to see me? What are you going to make me do? It was interesting in the first days, but I have found that my particular skill set is seeing what's coming and trying to meet that with what we need as coaches. So I was writing books before writing books was cool, for example. The books that have been the cornerstone of my system, the Be Bulletproof system, which is in part of the Bullseye Coaching program, is that idea of people were going to be more mobile and going to be more remote and going to be accessing online. And what did they need, even though they weren't going to be in a training room? And I will tell you, I really still believe that the quickest way to transform your life is to be in a training room with other individuals. It just is. And have that supported by a coach individually, so that you get the benefit of other people taking themselves on at that same level. So I like the merging of the training and coaching, but that's not what my client or market was asking for, right? They were saying, I can't carve the time out, even though they could. It became, okay, I don't want people to not get coached if they can't get to a training room. So how do I share this work and the opportunity for my clients and my coaches, you know, to get the support they need through this wonderful thing, sometimes not wonderful, called the internet, right? And so first it was the books. It was like, okay, how do I create a system and support? And I think what I was finding in the early days was to create a sense of urgency within the structure of what I provided, because it supported me and my efforts to, let's see where we are. we're making declarations every week. Yes, we can do that. And yes, we can create a language, if you will, about distinctions, how you're finding these distinctions in your life, and how are things showing up for you, and where can you get beyond that. That is a great structure for coaches to have. It helps them see and listen clearer to their clients. Because as you say, and part of that listening is understanding how to meet your client where they are, so that you know where they are before you try to reveal what the next steps are. So I was looking at it from a big picture or macro perspective, and I saw, okay, first of all, I needed a structure with my clients to build some sort of continuity or measuring, if you will, our progress as a solo coach. And I think people, when they hang up their shingle, they're thinking, okay, well, I'll just set up my calls at a certain time period. But they didn't set up a basic structure for looking at the direction that their clients were going. They would establish vision. They might have some assessments, a few assessments, but it wasn't getting to the heart of the discovery and breakthrough and then implementation in their life that I was seeking. I wanted results from my clients, and I wanted results for myself, right? So without getting too attached to that, I was like, hey, what's the clearest pathway? What's the way to generate urgency here? That is not something I began to hammer on as if I'm going to get them somewhere, right? It had to be something that was generated with coaches. It's a long way to answer your question. But in the end, what I see coming for us next is there's still this element, and it's increasing actually, where people are valuing their time in a way that they hadn't before. They're able to work anywhere. They're able to work whatever hours in whatever clothes they want to wear, and achieve remarkable results if they've taken a look at their life and they've seen, okay, this is what it means to me to live an extraordinary life. How do I get here in the quickest way possible? I'm seeing a lot of that. How do I get here in the quickest way possible? And there's a sense of life is short that has not been in the zeitgeist or the water in my experience ever, right? People lost people during COVID. We have a sense of there's both this sense of fear of missing out and a sense of what's next. I'm excited about that, right? So I think AI is going to change our profession, and I think we should lean into it instead of away from it, because we have the opportunity to shape that conversation even at a higher level. So I think that is really what's next. And I wanted to put it in the context of it's still another structure. It's still a structure that we're building to take things to a higher, more advanced, and very integrated place. I don't advocate that willy-nilly. I advocate it that we as a profession take a look at how we can shape that conversation going forward to keep the professional standards that have been set, whether there's licensing or not. And that means maintaining that sense of safety within the AI world. And when I say safety, I mean credibility also. That people know that, okay, this person knows what they're doing. David asked me to become a founder, and I decided not to do that at that point in my life because I was so active in building what I was building, right? I felt very committed to seeing what was next and to just executing what was next. And as I am more seasoned or longer in the tooth, if we're going to continue the metaphor, cutting our teeth now longer in the tooth, right? That becomes more of a fulfilling thing for me, is to see how other people are growing their businesses and to see how they're executing on this newer technology and merging it with the things that we know that are tried and true and work. There's a balance.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
I once
think
heard
we're in very exciting times, aren't we? I concur with what you've said. I think clients are presenting ever more complex and sophisticated needs, and coaches need to step up their coaching and listening skills, their conversational skills in order to support that. It's, the days of having a manual and the top 50 coaching questions and, being good enough is just not good enough. And I think we've really matured nicely as a profession. And I think it's a profession that's now very accessible. I don't think there's a stigma attached to it in the majority of countries anymore. Maybe not quite so easy in countries like Romania, etc. But in general, it's an acceptable thing to reach out and get the support of a coach to help you achieve your personal and or professional goals. And as I say, it's quite often, particularly post-COVID, very complex and sophisticated needs, as opposed to what I was seeing before, like I want to lose weight, I want to change my job. Now coaches understand about transformational coaching questions, about coaching the person, not the issue, the presenting issue, to get a deeper dive. So I think it's a really exciting time we're in, and I think it's lovely to see how it's matured and continues to evolve.
Yes, I agree with that. And perhaps not keeping a lid on it and not requiring licensing is what's helped that happen. It's like, because there are coaches that just want to coach exactly what they have experience in. And so I guess the challenge is, or the opportunity is, like, because challenge can sometimes be a trigger word, but the opportunity here is to say, okay, you have this expertise, that's great. Now, what are your clients really saying about that expertise, right? And where is it that they would like to go? So, yeah, I was going to share that a gentleman who was president of a major bank in North Carolina, where I'm originally from, when ATMs were introduced, when this high technology was introduced, he said, where there's high tech, there needs to be high touch. I think coaches are particularly geared toward making that sure those two are married, right? So I don't mean to like stretch people beyond their level of acceptance. I mean for them to be, okay, yes, I'm talking about the use of technology down the road, and the technology is here, so let's lean into it, but never forget that it's really about that connectedness that that we're creating, despite viewing people and seeing people on screen more often than seeing them in person. So I think that there is a lot to be shared as coaches, professional coaches, with people who want to become coaches. That's sort of naturally in the space of we started out connecting. We started out connecting face to face and pretty intensely, you know,
It's an
and that,
interesting subject, and it's the same for salespeople or for anybody in the conversation business. We kind of feel protected because, you know, no way could a robot do our job. They can't do sales, they can't do conversations, they can't do coaching. But I think we, as you say, we need to lean into it. We need to learn it. We need to embrace it, not be frightened of it, and work with it without losing control. I think that's people's fear. I know Elon Musk has talked about, you know, let's put a halt on this for a while, because it's racing ahead faster than we can comprehend and understand what the longer term goals are. In fact, I think tonight I'm going to a masterclass on AI and coaching. So it's here. We might as well find out how we can use it rather than have it use us.
exactly.
But you know, it's we've opened Pandora's box. You can't put it back in now. So we might as well embrace it and learn about it. What do they say? You know, keep your enemies close. So if it's not something, you know, if you're technophobe like me, you still need to know about it, just so you know
Yeah.
what is going on. But you
Yes.
sound very much worldly wise in terms of the bigger picture and thinking it could potentially be a good thing.
Yes. And not that I wanted to focus so much on that. I actually didn't plan to, you know.
That's the beauty of these conversations, Betsy. We never know where they're going.
Where's this going? Yeah, that's right. So I guess, Dawn, what's next for you? You know, because I saw the organization begin, right? It's in its beginnings, and was an early adapter, which is not, which is, as you can probably tell from the conversation, I am an early adapter, and I am an initiator, and I find great joy in that, and actually being ahead of the curve. Yeah, I just want to know, what do you see? Where do you see your personal practice going?
Well, I'm the older I get, Betsy, and I am older than you, I'm getting more and more chilled with my clients, and I kind of sum it up like my goal is to have no more goals. I just want to go with the flow. I'm a practicing Buddhist, and I'm very much more into understanding, accepting, and noticing what I notice comes up, and being a bit like a Japanese cherry blossom tree, just, you know, accepting, not fighting, and working my way through the seasons and helping my client through with meditation techniques and mindfulness techniques to relax into whatever is going on, to have an embodied experience with it, not fight it. So it's a slightly different approach to the sort of go-getter coach I was 20 years ago. And to that end, I take my clients out walking, or I take them in the kitchen and I get them busy doing stuff which kind of helps them free flow, as opposed to sitting over a desk eyeball to eyeball. So I'm primarily health and business coaching, and the two are inextricably linked as far as I'm concerned. The health of the entrepreneur is usually reflected in the health of the business, and vice versa. So yeah, I take them out, and longer term, I want to take them on pilgrimages so that they can really get in touch from a Buddhist point of view, their ancestor, all the other people who have walked that path and come through something, and a lot of it done in silence. That's what I hope I will be doing.
That is wonderful. That sounds wonderful. Yes.
I was ready to do that when COVID hit and we all had lockdown. So I was just planning my first pilgrimage with another coach, doing St. David's Walk in Wales, which I think is about 130 something miles. and I've bought my, all-weather rucksack and whatever. So that all had to be put on hold, and the business took a more online direction. So guided meditations, etc.
Well,
But all good.
yeah, that's I think, we talk about how our minds go when we're driving somewhere, so if you're
Yeah.
doing something, if you're physically active, or if you're moving through space, I do think that affords a different. And I used to ask my daughter to turn around in a circle to change her attitude.
Yes. Yeah.
And it would every time, because it became
Yeah.
funny. Just
Yeah.
that itself,
Yes.
just get in a circle until your attitude's changed.
Yeah. It reminds me of that great book, Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
You can't change your situation, but change your perception of it, and then suddenly you can work with it. I
Yes.
like
Yes,
that.
that's
You can get clients to do that. Just stand up and turn 360 degrees and what's your perspective of the situation now? That's a good exercise. I'm just going to check my phone in case Gillian has sent me any messages. No, nothing yet. So I'm conscious of the time. I said I'd only keep you half an hour. I know you're busy, but I would love to know if you're willing to share outside of work, Betsy, what makes your heart sing? Because we all love our work, but we can't all be work and no play. So outside of work, what do you love doing?
I expected this question from you. That is what I did notice. Okay, so I have been a single mom, and in spending time with my daughter, in enjoying and celebrating every phase of that, of being a single parent. I've traveled. Travel is something that really opens my world up, opens my perspective, and I'm not domestic and international travel. I really enjoy that. Meeting new people, coaching profession came easily to me because it was all about people, right? So, I also have been producing films, and I've got a television show that I'm hoping is going to be picked up. So it's work, but it's not, it's play. And the show itself is Life Tracks, and it's about a kid having a dream of doing something that an adult does. So it's still like in the same venue, but it's of human development. I enjoy politics, which I probably have talked to you about over the years a little bit. And I'm very, very involved in the presidential campaign here in the United States, as is the rest of the world. And I'm in DC, Washington, DC now, where I was in North Carolina for the better part of my life. So I still create, and I go wherever my imagination takes me, actually, believing that I am source of my life. And so I don't know if I told you that mind body education I did.
Yes,
I got
with Deepak Chopra.
That's
Yes.
right. So early on, before I was a coach, I studied with him, and I studied with him when I was pregnant. My daughter's 28 now. And so that experience was a basis for me being source of my life, right? Okay, because I began to see the connection of the mind and the body, and I began to see how that plays out in a larger perspective too. How what we think is what we, manifest. And so I began to work with manifestation and things like that. So when I decide I'm going to do a film, for example, I decided that when I couldn't go see people coaching in person, I figured out how to create the team for that. And then we created a film, and that film is on the market and has had distribution contracts and all that sort of stuff. So I really am sort of a farmer, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to have to give us a link to that. Yeah. I'm always, I don't say always amazed, but I am amazed. Even when I worked corporately, but also as a coach, that people, have written a book, they're a great coach, they've created a program, but actually when you ask a transpersonal question like what makes your heart sing, then you realize how creative everybody is. You just have to tap into their passion. And we all have superpowers. And I know, neurodiversity brings out a whole different set of superpowers. But I'm always amazed when people say, oh, I'm a photographer, or I'm a filmmaker, or I'm a jazz pianist, or whatever. And I just think, wow, you're walking around and people have no idea, because most people don't ask the right questions, to know that they're sat next to or stood next to a superstar in the making, in their own lifetime. It's wonderful to hear all this kind of information.
Well, and see, acting, I was on the other side of the camera, is what led me to coaching. So I was getting chosen number 2 for all these parts I was auditioning for, and they were major. Like there was a Steven Spielberg film, there was an American Express commercial, and I was like, what is that? Why am I not just blowing them away, right? In my auditions?
Yeah.
Because if I did, they would choose me,
Yeah.
even if the guy was too short, that kind of thing. I was like, I don't know. And somebody who had gone through the same coaching program said, I think you're going to discover this. Not only would you be a great addition to this group of people, and then I got in this training room and saw these people transforming their lives. And when I was like, oh, I'd like to be the cause of that. I'd like, to see how I could do that. And so my book series also has something to do with how I created a video in like 3 months time. And it was all about creativity and mind-body connection and all that, how it is also a system that the energetic system that resides within our bodies can guide us to how we see what's showing up in the world. So if there's anything I keep needing to relearn over and over again, it's that I'm the source of it all.
Yes.
And it's I'm not, disparaging religion or whatever, because I believe there are a lot of roads to lead to the same place, but this, then therefore Bullseye Coach is very much grounded in the principles of what they consider universal spiritual principles. And so, you can create anything out of there. You can build a car out of there, like Elon Musk is practices that connection, whether or not he talks about it. You can tell.
Yes. Yeah. And you can tell people's energy.
That's right. Now, I'm not a real fan about how he treats his people and the fact that he works himself to death. But that's how he's creating these remarkable things for the world. And
yes. Yeah.
So
we all have a responsibility to show up with full intent and lots and lots of energy. So you mentioned something earlier that made me think of fire starter. So yeah, I think of you as a fire starter, and it's a label I've always said, because I'm not a follower through. I know that. I know where my strengths lie. I create things. But then I want other people to do and I think that's why David and I gel so well together, because he says you're the woo-woo spiritual one, fire starter. He's the academic who sees the big picture and dots the I's and crosses the T's. So, there's a place for all of us out there.
Yes, I think so. And I think also I asked a trainer one time, you said certain things were woo-woo, but there's a lot about this that's woo-woo, and I think his response was perfect for what I needed to hear, which is, if it's woo-woo to be woo-woo, if it's woo-woo to a purpose, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because his book list, his reading list was like, how can you say that, I was having a hard time with distinguishing,
Yeah.
what was good woo-woo and what was bad woo.
That's just reminded me of that book, Woo Woo, and I never got round to reading it. I must look it up. Everybody was like the years ago, everybody you looked at was reading the Celestine Prophecy,
Yes.
or Rich Dad Poor Dad, or and there was a time everybody was reading Woo Woo a couple of years back, and I thought, what is this book? I must get it. But I'm so much more into podcasts at the moment, because it just means that you can be on the go and
Yes.
yeah. So I'll have to
And
revisit that woo woo book. But
yeah,
I'm conscious, as I say, of the time and not keeping you. You and I could talk for ages, and I'm sure
I
people
know.
could listen, and we'll have to have you back. I'm just checking my phone in case Gillian has got any comments, but there isn't. So anybody listening out there, you've got a real sense of Betsy's fabulous energy and her philosophy. And obviously she's got her self-teach, empowering, mentoring online program. But if people want to work with you directly, obviously they can find you on LinkedIn and the IAPC&M directory. What's the other best way to find you, Betsy, to find out how to work with you and what's coming up?
Well, my website is it's Bullseye Coach, and there are going to be some transitions in my business, so that's the best way to keep up. I am on social media. Bullseye Coach is on Facebook, and you can reach me at info@bullseyecoach.com.
Okay.
For the moment, and later it will be info@betsyjordan.com.
Okay. Now, a lot of new coaches struggle with creating a name for their business. I have to ask you, how did you come up with Bullseye Coaching? Because it hits the target, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And if you'll notice, if you go to my website, you'll see the logo. The logo is actually a maze.
Yeah,
It's a
it
maze.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the center of which is yourself. It evolved. I was working with some people in my office, and we brainstormed that, and it came up. And it's interesting because one of the people that I was working with, her spouse is in special forces.
Okay.
And I was trying to wrap my head around. I was actually running for office at this time.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was trying to wrap my head around how can I accept, that I'm having to have conversations about the National Rifle Association.
Yeah.
I'm having conversations with my clients about living an extraordinary life, coming from source, focused on love being the most powerful source that there is, and how do I do that? And then how do I, because at the time I was coaching executives, corporate executives, and how do I have them understand that this is not them having to go away and sit on top of a mountain, right?
Yeah.
Because they're driven to get results quickly for a group of stockholders, for example, or for other people, that their teammates, I guess. And so how could I participate in this lingo and also get my point across that the source is always you, and who you take to work is going to indicate a lot of times what kind of day you're going to have.
Yeah.
That's also, I mean, you asked me what time it is, I'm going to tell you how to make a watch.
Okay. All right.
So that's how it just came up.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, thank you as always. It's a pleasure. I'm going to email you afterwards and see when we can get you booked in to deliver a masterclass and share your inspirational story if you've got time to do one for the community, and also get you interviewed for our inspirational authors interview series. I know I've talked to you about this before. We need to get your books reviewed. on the book review club and get you interviewed. So I will start that ball rolling. And if you can find us the space to do it, we'll make it happen.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. And I've enjoyed this so much. And
Thank you.
if anybody has any questions, please, feel free to.
You can contact
Great.
Betsy various places, but always through the IAPC&M contact page or me, and I will forward questions on to Betsy, particularly if you want to work with her. So I highly recommend you doing that. So thank you, Betsy, and thank you everyone for listening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.